Hello, and welcome to Save Your Sanity live stream and podcast. I'm Dr. Rhoberta Shaler. I'm delighted that you're here. If you've been with us before, welcome back. And if you're new, welcome, welcome, welcome. This podcast is to help you recognize and to recover and rebuild after a toxic relationship. All kinds of things about emotional abuse. And we are going to be talking about a big topic tonight. In fact, it's a word that I just coined, and we're going to talk about PastCasting and what it is and 8 ways it can keep you stuck in a toxic relationship. And we need all the help that we can get unstuck and to get motivated. Even if you're exhausted, you do want to have a better life. You want to experience those 3 things I talk about all the time that are the must-haves of a healthy adult relationship. You want to, at a minimum, be in a relationship that has equality, reciprocity, and mutuality. But if you are in a habit of PastCasting, these things are going to elude you, but they will keep you stuck, really, really stuck. So I want to talk about that with you tonight. I want to invite you to support the show. This helps keep us on the air and keeps cost-defrayed. Go to patreon.com/saveyoursanity. You can make a one-time donation or a small monthly donation. That really helps. Patreon.com/saveyoursanity. And thank you in advance for doing that. If you're new and you are on Facebook, make sure that you go to my page at facebook.com/hijackals. And you can always watch from there. Once you like the page, you will get notifications when the show is going live. And if you're on YouTube and you subscribe and hit the notification bell, you'll also get news about the topic for each time. So let's proceed and talk about PastCasting. What could it possibly be? So I want you to think about fly fishing. You've seen it if you've never tried it, I'm sure. So you have this beautiful river running in front of you. You know there's fish in there. You have your rod. You have a beautiful fly on the rod. And you are hoping to make something work. You'd like to catch a fish and have dinner and celebrate, and this would all be wonderful. But things prevent you from doing that. So when you bring the rod back, which you do, and then you flip it into the river, when you bring the rod back, it continually casts itself and catches on something behind you. And PastCasting is a lot like that. I'm going to tell you 8 ways that we PastCast. But it's when we return to another time in our relationship and we prefer to think about that time than the time that we're actually in. Have you experienced that? You just prefer to think about it differently, and I'm going to give you 8 ways we do that. But let's first just talk about, and let me remind you of my definition of a toxic relationship. It's any adult relationship where interactions are verbally and emotionally abusive, where there is intentionally damaging, controlling, or otherwise lacking in equality, reciprocity, and mutuality. So let's just run that one again so you really understand what my definition is. It's toxic relationship is any adult relationship where interactions are verbally and emotionally abusive, intentionally damaging, controlling, or otherwise lacking in equality, reciprocity, and mutuality. So just by that definition, would you say you're in a toxic relationship? Do you have a toxic relationship with your partner, or a parent, or a sibling, or even an adult child, or maybe a coworker? It's all possible because that person is intentionally damaging and controlling and manipulating. And if that's the case, then we don't want to get stuck in that relationship. So we want to understand this new term that I've created called PastCasting. So we remember the beginning of our relationship. We remember that, oh, it was so lovely. For most people, that's their memory Because when a hijackal, one of those relentlessly difficult, toxic people, sets their sights on you, they know how to aim and hit the mark. They know how to listen. They know to listen for your vulnerabilities, listen for what it is you want, and then for a while they give it to you, and you cannot believe your luck. You have found this wonderful, wonderful person, and you are thinking, this is all I ever asked for. This is all I've ever wanted, and this would be great. And so we like to go back to the beginning and say, oh, that's the real person. But if you're with a hijackal, and remember that's my trademark term and is defined this way, a hijackal is a person who hijacks a relationship for their own purposes and then proceeds to relentlessly scavenge the relationship for power, for status, and for control. So that's what a hijackal is. And so if you find yourself with a hijackal now who is establishing or trying to establish control and manipulation, then we tend to want to go back and say, oh, this isn't the real person. This person is being nasty and demeaning and degrading and belittling and dismissive and discounting. We want to say, oh, no, the real person was the person that I met in the beginning. And actually, that's not true. What they were doing was being their best chameleon-like self. They were being that chameleon who could be whatever color they thought you wanted to see. They could be however they felt they wanted to be that would make you happy and that would shorten the journey for them of getting you to come into their trap. So they would do anything to help them with that situation. So what's our part in it? Okay. Number one way that we can get stuck is that we start to deny what's in front of us. We start to say, it's not happening. All of this difficulty and everything is not real. What was real was what we had at the beginning. But we deny that it's happening. And our friends say things like, hey, that's not right, or I don't like the way that person treats you. And we meet them with, oh, you just don't understand. You don't understand what they're going through. So you deny the abuse. Maybe you don't even want to call it that, but we'll talk about that in number 2. But you deny what's actually happening. You don't want to see it, so you deny it. And that is a big way to be stuck, because it is actually happening. It is reality on a day-to-day basis. It doesn't help to get yourself out of it by past casting, taking yourself back and getting hooked on the past. It doesn't help. It prolongs the stuckness. It prolongs the pain too. And so it's very important to understand that dynamic, right? So number 2 is you tend to invalidate, meaning that what is happening, don't call it abuse. That's not abuse. That's a terrible thing to say about somebody, right? So we invalidate what it is we're seeing. We don't want to call it abuse. Well, there's lots of reasons for that. You know, nobody wants to say, I find myself in an abusive relationship, and then how did I get here? And we'll often blame ourselves. And how did I allow myself to get here? Or what was wrong with me? Or is there something wrong with me? And so we deny that it's abuse. We don't want to be part of an abusive relationship, of course. But then we deny that we're actually in one. We invalidate the evidence right in front of our eyes, the evidence in how we feel. We invalidate it and say, no, this isn't abusive. Now, that's a big deal. It's a really big deal because it's actually happening. So you actually start to gaslight yourself. You know, we hate it when hijackals gaslight us or narcissists gaslight us. We hate that because they're trying to impose their reality on us. But sometimes we create a false reality and say, oh no, I'm going to invalidate this. This isn't abuse. Does that make sense? because it's a big thing to notice if we're doing it. Yeah, absolutely. I'll say again, you don't want to believe that you find yourself in an abusive relationship. You don't want your relationship labeled as abusive, even in your own head. I totally get that. But the first step of going forward is to know where you are right now. And if you have to say, yes, it's abusive, emotionally abusive, verbally abusive, hopefully not, but could be physically or sexually abusive, might be financially abusive, might be spiritually abusive. But there are elements of abuse in it. And for us to be able to wake up and smell the herbal tea and call it what it is a big step forward, a really big step forward. So number one in past casting is that we will deny it's happening. And number two is we will invalidate it. We won't call it what it is. We will make reasons for not doing that, but we won't call it what it is. So that becomes another way we get stuck. So number three, we get caught in self-blame. We start taking ownership for what's happening to us, which is good, except we overcompensate and overaccommodate and say, it must be me. It must be my fault. Now, that's not hard to do when you're with a hijackal, because they're always telling you everything is your fault. So you may begin to believe that. And then you start to internalize it and you get involved in self-blame. If only I were a better person, this person would not be abusive. If only I were not so difficult. If I were more patient. If I were more understanding. All of these things you start taking on yourself. And yes, it's always a good idea to have a good look at yourself. See what's really going on. That's the best place to start. But don't get stopped there. You now have to look at the river with the fish and the boulders and the kelp, or whatever it is that's growing in there. Probably not kelp in the river, right? And you've got to get real about it. So you can't be into self-blame or you'll get stuck. You can be into self-reflection. What part of this is mine and can I do something about it? That's empowering yourself. But if you get into self-blame, where you are hooked into, oh, well, I'm a terrible person, and nobody else would want me. Of course, everything is my fault because I just don't understand how to be a good partner. And you start echoing in your mind what the hijackal has told you about you. Does that sound familiar to you? That now you're starting to talk to yourself the way the hijackal talks to you? You know, I've said many times I had hijackal parents, and I will find that, maybe I'm a little bit stressed or something, and I'm doing something in the kitchen, and I'll hear my mother's voice giving me a hard time, and I've internalized it myself, but I recognize it as my mother's voice, and that can happen, or maybe I'm concerned about something working out well. And I start to think, oh, I shouldn't have even tried it. That's my mother's voice, don't do that. But I will sometimes in those moments, I recognize them and I correct it right away. But I've done a lot of work to do that and helped a lot of people to do that too. But when I see it, I know what to do about it. And if you need my help, I have a 1-hour new client introductory offer for only $97 at beaclient.com. Simple link, client.com. Because having walked through all these things, experienced all these things, plus having all my training in psychology, I've helped myself and I can help you. But we get into that self-blame place because it's easiest. Nobody's going to give us any backlash. If we blame a hijackal, everything breaks loose. As I say so frequently, don't poke a hijackal. There's no percentage in it. It never goes well for you. But then if you turn that on yourself and start blaming yourself, where the blame actually belongs over there, even though you can't express it outrightly for fear of rage, you do want to eliminate it from turning into self-blame and self-deprecation, because that will keep you stuck. It could put you into a mindset that says, well, I'm this terrible person. No one would ever want me. I better stay here and stay with what I've got. Now, there are lots of reasons for staying. I understand that. Financial reasons, logistic reasons, children, all kinds of things. Every case is different. There's no one size fits all here. But one thing for sure, none of us need to be engaged in self-blame. Self-reflection, yes. Figure it out. What's my part in it? What happens if I change that or I take responsibility for it? But not self-blame, because that will bring us right screeching to a halt, and then we will be stuck there. We will be stuck thinking that we kind of deserve this. Nobody deserves abuse. I know, sometimes you don't even want to say the word. I get it. You know, I didn't want to say that my father had sexually abused me for a long time. I didn't want to say that because I loved my dad. But once I got clear about it, it was abuse. And you have to call it as you sees it. And that's the truth of the matter. Okay, so past casting. Casting our mind back to a better time and believing that that's the reality. It's gaslighting yourself. So I've talked about denial and invalidation and self-blame. So we've got 3 of the 8 things. So number 4 is distraction. You know, I'm not going to think about it. I'm not going to think about it. I'm not going to think about it, and it'll go away. You know, that sort of thing. I will get very, very busy. I will do everything that I have on my to-do list in 20 minutes. I will go other places. I will be with other people. I will do all kinds of things, and that will allow me to distract myself from the fact that I am not living my best life, and I'm not living with the person I fell in love with. The person I fell in love with does not exist. That was an act. And it's sad, and it's real. So very important to notice if you're distracting yourself. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to think about it. I'm just going to put one foot in front of the other. As long as I'm surviving, that's all that matters. And if you find yourself with self-talk like that, you want to change that. You want to change it because it's the distraction and it's self-blame. Do you know what I'm talking about, this distraction business? You know, you get really involved in something else or really involved with the children, which can be very positive, but if they're a replacement for your relationship, that's not great. So really important to understand if you distract yourself. Yeah, sure, we distract ourselves to get away from the pain sometimes, but we do have to come back and say, all right, I'm going to face this one square on. This is what's actually happening. This is the real deal. This is what is going on. And get very, very clear about that. So distraction. Number 5 is procrastination. We know we need to do something about it. We know we need to talk to a specialist in this area, with or without our partner. And again, you know, if you want to talk to me or you want my help, just go to beaclient.com. Beaclient.com. We can talk. But we have to be very careful about this procrastination business. Years can go by, and we just keep putting it off. Oh, maybe it'll get better. Some kind of magical thinking, you know, magical thinking. And it's not going to get better. You know in your heart of hearts, if it was going to get better, it would have gotten better, but it didn't. And now you have to face it. Don't procrastinate any longer, but you will pastcast yourself in going into procrastination because, oh, well, you know, I've dealt with it so far. I'm still alive. Okay, well, you know, we're managing. And you placate yourself with some of those things. Managing at what level? managing at what capacity, managing at what level of anxiety. This is so hard on your body. Let me just say something about that. If you live with chronic stress and anxiety and you add in some isolation, and this continues over time, your body is going to scream at you in all likelihood. Now, of course, some people can eat all the junk in the world, ignore their bodies completely, and it doesn't scream at them. But when you have a lot of anxiety and you have stress and you have isolation, that is a very difficult combination for the body to deal with, and so it has ways of breaking down. One of the ways it breaks down is it gets inflammation, and you will have things like Crohn's disease, or you will have inflammatory conditions, fibromyalgia, things like that will show up. And they do show up more. In fact, in a somewhat related study, Dr. Gabor Mate in Vancouver in Canada, he did a study of women who had been in chronic stress and isolation. Chronic stress, anxiety, and isolation. And when you put those factors together in a small sample, it was a small sample of people, but when you put those factors together and monitored them all the way through, the women in that mix were 9 times more likely to get breast cancer than the average person not living in that condition. So the body screams. And then we deny the body, oh well, that's inconvenient. And the body screams louder. So we have to notice, if we're procrastinating, we're putting off our own good, we're putting off dealing with what's real, then we're giving ourselves a message that we don't matter. And when we give ourselves a message that we don't matter, things get worse. Do you know what I'm talking about? Have you had that experience? The pile just gets deeper, and you get more exhausted from endeavoring to carry it or from the weight of it. So important to notice. So if you're procrastinating, looking at the reality of your relationship, you can be past casting, saying, well, it started out really well, and I'm sure we're going to get up to that. But if we're not, one day I will do it. One day I will do it. But for now, I'm going to stay here and not do anything about it. So there we have 5. So number 6 is that we start second guessing ourselves. How many times do I look in the rearview mirror of life and I'm saying, oh, well, I hope it'll get better. I hope it'll be like I remember it. I told a story not too long ago on the podcast about the client whose husband hit her, and then she immediately excused his behavior by saying, but 3 weeks ago he brought me flowers and told me he loved me. That's the kind of thing that is very confusing to yourself. 3 weeks ago he was appeasing you. Today, the real thing is you have a big mark across your face because he hit you with a hairbrush. Sad but true, actually happened. And then you start past casting. Well, those 3 weeks ago he told me that he loved me, so that must still be true. And you'll remember from the other podcast that I asked her, I took her to the mirror and I said, so is this big mark here that you have, is that a love tap then? And then we began to get somewhere in the breakdown of, no, this really happened. We've got to stay in the moment, not cast our mind to the past in happier days. So we start to second guess ourselves, and we start to say things like, well, is it really so bad? I've put up with it this far. Is it really so bad? And you cast your mind back to happier times and times when there was resolution, and really awful times, but then there was that moment of sunshine and flowers, and you keep thinking, okay, those moments, those are the highlights. That's when the lights went on and the birds sang. So you keep remembering that, past casting back to that time. And so you start second guessing yourself. Is it really that bad? Is it really abusive? Is it me? Is it something that I'm doing? And you start getting into that mindset of, oh, I shouldn't leave. It's probably I'm the bad one. Maybe I have a problem. Okay, if you think you have a problem, get some help and find out. because then you want to be empowered. You know, I'm writing this new book called Emerging Empowered, Breaking the Bonds of Emotional Abuse. You want to be empowered. And so frequently I say to people, if there's no sexual or physical abuse, then stay until you're empowered with new strategies, a new way of thinking about things, a new set of skills to try out and see what you can achieve, a new way of setting boundaries and making them non-negotiable. Leave empowered, and then you will not leave things behind and leave things on the table. So very important. So if you find yourself second guessing yourself, the question always comes up. You know, people leave and they make this wonderful grand gesture. They leave, they feel so relieved, and then slowly the doubts crawl in. Was it me? Was I the narcissist? Was I the hijackal? Was I the difficult one? Should I have been more patient or less nagging, or, you know, any myriad of things? And when we get into that state, then we're second guessing ourselves, and to the exclusion of the real deal that's right in front of you, the reality of the day-to-day behaviors, the words that are thrown at you, the accusations that come your way, the fault finding that come your way. When you're clear that you're good and it's coming at you, get some help to sort that out so that you are not erroneously taking on the blame for things that are not yours. You don't deserve to be abused. No one deserves to be abused or misused. So don't start second guessing yourself that there's some reason why you should stay in an abusive relationship. There isn't. You deserve to have a non-abusive life. Very important. Okay, so we've got 6 things. Now, number 7 is that we will cast our mind back. We'll do that past casting. And we will start making excuses and rationalizations and justifications, because we really want that person that we fell in love with to be the real person. We really want that to be true, that we didn't make a mistake. We fell in love with this wonderful person, and it was going to be a wonderful walk out into the sunset for the rest of our lives and be delightful and only get better. And then if you had a few years of honeymoon time, yay. But I have had clients who had a day, maybe 3 days, before the cracks started to show in their relationship, because the other person felt they could now relax. They gotcha. You know, in my book, Escaping the Hijackal Trap, which is available on Amazon and it's a download, so you can get it really quickly, Escaping the Hijackal Trap, I have a whole chapter in there called The Gotcha Factor. That's, they do everything that they can until they feel like they can rush you along and capture you, and then they gotcha. And they do that by being in a hurry, by saying that you should live together way too early, or get married way too early, or get pregnant way too early, so they can get you, get their talons into you. So then you will be less likely to leave, and when they start behaving like their real selves, you will be hooked. And that's the gotcha factor. So then you start making excuses and rationalizations and justifications why the hijackal is not behaving how they did when you past cast and went back to the beginning of the relationship. So it sounds like this: oh, well, they're really having a hard time at work. Oh, it's a difficult time, you know, they're unemployed. Oh, well, I know they have no money. I shouldn't resent giving them money. They have stress in their life. They had an unhappy childhood. They're going through things, you know. I mean, a whole litany of phrases. I bet you could add a whole bunch of them as to what you have heard about that way of thinking about the rationalizations and the justifications that you've heard in your own head about how you past cast. You tried to go back to the good times and highlight them so you could diminish the light on what is really going on a day-to-day basis. Really important to see that. And so number 8 it's sort of not about past casting, but it is when you cast your mind back and you find number 8 is exhaustion. That you're just so tired. You're tired of being put down, tired of being worn down and torn down. And you're just so tired that you just allow yourself to say, it can't be that bad. It was great in the beginning. Maybe it's me. And you add all those things, the denial, the invalidation, the self-blame, the distraction, the procrastination, the second guessing, the making excuses, and then you're exhausted and you just can't face the prospect of seeing it for what it is and having to do something about it if you'd like it to change. And so you use all 7 things and then you get stuck in exhaustion. And that happens too. So that's what I mean by past casting. Casting our mind back to a happier time, fixating on it and believing it's true, when right in front of us it is not going well. We are not being treated with honesty, safety, trust, respect, and reliability. We are not being honored. We're definitely not feeling loved. And we have to notice those things. Those are important things. They're real. So very important. And, if you ever find yourself needing more information, just go to SaveYourSanityPodcast.com. That's on my website. You can see all of the episodes, or go anywhere that you like to get your podcasts. We're on every podcatcher, as they call it, there is. So wherever you like to go, TuneIn or Stitcher or Castbox or any of those places, iTunes, we're on all of those places. SaveYourSanityPodcast.com. And you can search, if you go on my website, SaveYourSanityPodcast.com, there's a search bar and you can put in a word and find episodes that are pertinent to what is going on in your life. So that's very important. And if you're on YouTube, you can certainly search my name and a topic and it will come up. So do that. And while you're over there, there's over 540 videos I've done. Maybe you'll learn a few things that you're looking for there too. So, lots to talk about in this new idea that I came up with just recently to give a name to what we do. Cast our mind backwards to better time, a happier time, a time that was more loving and encouraging, and I call it past casting. So if you find yourself with that habit of past casting, I hope today was drawing some attention to it, that's not healthy. We have to stay in the present moment and deal with what is. Let's not be gaslighting ourselves. There's enough gaslighting in the world coming from hijackals. Let's not gaslight ourselves. Very important. So I hope this topic has shed some light, made you think about a few things. And if you have questions, you can always find me. Find me at my Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/hijackals. There's about 900 people over there that you can talk to. And I'm over there too, so you can join in. Facebook.com/groups/hijackals. All right, so those are important things. So as you think about these things, take very good care of yourself this week. Treat yourself well. Demonstrate respect for yourself. Demonstrate care and love for the way that you decide to show up in the world and the way that you treat yourself. Talk soon. Hello, everybody. Better night tonight. No technical difficulties. So I'm excited and happy. I'm glad you're here and that you've been putting things in the chat as we went along. I'm always happy to hear someone say what a Facebook user said, I needed this so much today. I'm so glad we were here for you with the right topic, which was just what you needed to hear. We're here every Monday night at 7 o'clock, unless the world freezes over or I fall over. So join us, but make sure that you subscribe. Subscribe on YouTube or like one of my Facebook pages. You can go to facebook.com/hijackals. That's where I put all the graphics, all the memes that you can share with other people and you can share in the groups you belong to. I put them all in one place so you'd have them. So that's facebook.com/hijackals. And you can find them and share them because I'm sure you are in groups where people are asking questions and you would have a ready graphic to share, which is a worthwhile thing to do. And a Facebook user also said, I've been wondering lately if I was the problem. Well, it's a good wonder. As I said earlier, it's good to be self-reflective. That's a great place to start. But after you've realized that, no, it's not you, then you really need to take off the rose-colored glasses and see the red flags. It's really, really important. So if you start to wonder if you're the problem, clarify that. Come on over and we'll talk. Go to beaclient.com. It's $97 for an hour for new clients. If you want to work with me further after that, that's lovely. I always encourage that. But if you just have a big question, you want to clarify something, use that. You can only use it one time, but use it for sure. Ekaterina says, hello. Southern Soul says, you're amazing. Thank you for all you do. You are so welcome. I do this because I've walked it. I had the hijackal parents. I naturally married a hijackal. I co-parented with a hijackal. I went to therapists and people told me I was crazy. Those are wonderful people who brought me up or that I was married to. I know all the ins and outs of it from every side. And I do have a doctorate in psychology, and I've focused on this area so that I can bring this kind of thing to you. So I'm glad you found me, and I'm glad that it's working for you. Diana, I haven't seen you before, nor have I seen Southern Soul. So welcome, welcome, welcome. Diana says, I feel like I'm going through this right now. Thank you for taking the time to let people know about these issues. You're so welcome. And if you have any questions about what you're going through, pop them in the chat because I stay here until there are no more questions. So if you have a question, Diana, do feel free to ask it. Mary says, thank you. Perfect timing. Well, isn't that interesting? A few people have found it perfect timing. There must be something in the air. Ekaterina says, I think the most difficult to determine a hijackal is when the contrast is really huge. For example, when for 3 months he's caring and kind, and one day he throws you with the loudness of his voice during washing the car. That's the thing. If a hijackal's needs are being met by you or elsewhere, they can be non-rageful for a while. But then the minute that they feel any sense of shame or blame or impending discomfort or their needs are not being met, you will get a rageful person or a sulking person goes into the silent treatment. So it's really, really difficult when you have this running from one side of the spectrum to the other. One day you're the best thing that ever happened to them and you look at them sideways and now you're the scum of the earth. That's the way they roll. And we need to know it. That's about them, not about you. And it's so important to recognize that because you might think it's about you and it isn't. So Ekaterina said, we have the theory that these guys have revenge about their devaluative narcissistic mothers. So during weeks they praise you and devaluate you like their moms did. Yes, it can certainly be the case. Hijackals came from somewhere, and most of them came from families that modeled this behavior or created this behavior through entitlement and then making somebody into a golden child. We've talked about that before, how there are, if you have hijackal parents, there will be a golden child that can do no wrong, and there will be a lost child that nobody really knows anything about or their whereabouts and they don't care. And then there'll be scapegoat child who will be blamed for everything, whether they did anything or not. These dynamics, and sometimes they can shift between kids in a family. So it is very, very difficult. I've talked a lot about how that's all created. So Eileen, hello. Been there, done that. Or it's their alcoholism. Yeah, alcoholism is a distraction in so many ways, isn't it? because we get all this information about alcoholism being a disease, and so we should have compassion for it. And yes, it's appropriate, but we can't have compassion for raging. We can't have compassion for people blaming us and shaming us. That's not appropriate. That's just not okay. So whether they're alcoholic or not, those are non-negotiable boundaries, right? Can't happen. Just can't happen. And the thing that is so important for us to realize is that boundaries do have to be set, and they do have to be non-negotiable, and they have to have consequences. Now, I've said it before during our chat times together that start with small boundaries, really tiny ones, and work up to the big ones that you'd like to have done first. But start with tiny ones so that people start to realize you mean what you say. Because many times we say things in anger, or we say things when we're feeling really good, and then when we're feeling bad, or if we said it when we were angry and we're not angry anymore, then we start backtracking. And as soon as we backtrack, they don't believe us anymore. That's the old crying wolf situation. So you never want to set a boundary that you are not going to have consequences for not following through. And then you have to do the follow through. There's the same thing with children. You can't say, if you do that, you're grounded for a month. And then they do it and they say, oh, well, I'm sure you didn't mean to. Now you have no presence. You have no clarity with the child. Well, when you're dealing with a hijackal, especially one who rages or sulks, you are dealing with a child. They got locked in somewhere emotionally between 3 and 7. And when they feel a little bit of shame, their 3 to 7-year-old comes out and behaves badly. And so you're really in the same situation. So you want to be really thinking about that's how that rolls. And when you do that, then you get more clarity, even including the alcoholism business. Brooke, hello. Thank you, she says. Well, you're very welcome. Glad to see you here speaking up. You may have been here before, but I haven't seen your name here before. Ekaterina says, we have discussed that next to such guy you have plastic feeling of imitation of relationship. Yeah, because remember what I always say, hijackals paint a public picture of perfection, and at home they provide a private place of pain. So outside we look like the perfect couple, the perfect family, everything is wonderful. Nobody knows the distress on the inside, and that's a really big problem. And as you say, it's an imitation of relationship. A Facebook user says he's acting fairly nice now that he has a girlfriend, and I'm doubting myself a lot. I feel so damaged. I'm so sorry that you're going through that. Being cheated on is never a good feeling, because not only does it make you feel sad, but it makes you feel that maybe you are not enough. And that has nothing to do with it when you're with a hijackal. The hijackal, you could do everything they ever wanted and you could do it perfectly, and as soon as you do it, they'd move the marker and tell you that's not what they wanted, or they wanted something different. So very important. Yes, you can be terribly damaged by it being with a hijackal, but the good news is that you can recover. You can recognize what's going on, you can realign within yourself, then you can recover and you can rebuild a life that is hijackal free. That's what we want to do. We want to be emerging empowered, breaking the bonds of emotional abuse. So I know how damaged you can feel, and I hope you reach out and get some help. But let me say it again. Get some help from someone who has a specialty in narcissistic abuse. Because if you don't, they don't often understand the depths of what you're feeling and what you've been through and what shifts you need to make. Some will, of course, but if you just take that step and find somebody who specializes in, not that they've, you ask a therapist, have you dealt with this before? They may have, but you want to say, is this your specialty? Is this where you spend your time studying? Because those are the people who will help you the most. I've had so many clients from all over the world say, I went to counseling with my partner, and every time my partner manipulated the therapist to be on his or her side, and I got rewounded. You're the first person who's ever understood what I'm talking about and what I feel, and that's because it's my specialty. So when you're feeling damaged, get some help, because you didn't bring it on yourself. It was perpetrated on you, and you don't want to allow it anymore. And it's damage that you can heal, and I hope you will. Eileen, hi. Finally found the courage to divorce 5 years ago. Yes, I gaslighted myself. I've listened to many of your podcasts, but this one has resonated with me the most, 100%. Good. Well, I think there is something in the air tonight, because people seem to have really needed this. And yes, there's a ton of things. This is episode 198 of Save Your Sanity, but there are a whole lot of bonus episodes too. So when you go and look for it, it looks like there are more episodes than that, and there are. But I also had a podcast before this called Emotional Savvy, the relationship help show. And when you go to my website, saveyoursanity.podcast.com, saveyourSanityPodcast.com, you will also see, well, you may not. Go to relationshiphelpnetwork.com. That's mine too. Relationshiphelpnetwork.com, and you will see that I had 200 episodes of Emotional Savvy there too. So there's even more for you. Stella, hi. I got flowers for my birthday last year from the Hijackal. The next day, everything is my fault. Oh, yes, that's hijackal behavior. I am drama. He discarded me. Insane mood swings. I've never understood this. Yeah, it's really hard to understand a hijackal, because they make everything your fault, but what it is theirs. And what they're thinking and what they're doing and the assumptions that they're making and the fear that they live with, and don't put your compassion hat on, the fear that they live with, it means that they're going to project outwards, and they're going to be super defensive, and they're going to do anything they can to stay on top of the pile. And that's why they do that. If you did everything perfectly, they would tell you that you didn't do everything perfectly, because they wanted something different, as I said. Or they would say, well, you do that fine, but, everything else in your life is poor. It's not good enough. And then they'll start focusing on that. Hijackal parent, the typical case that we always hear about is you present your report card and you got all A's but 1 B+. Do they talk about the A's? No. They say, what happened to the B+? Right? That's a hijackal move. That's what they do. They focus on making you smaller. So it's really important, Stella, to notice that all of that stuff is just to have control over you, make you feel small, feel that they can make you feel better, they can make you feel worse, and that's what creates trauma bonding. They will hurt you, and then they will swoop in and be your hero. I'm sorry, I love you so much. And you don't know what to do. So you get trauma bonded to the person who hurt you is the person who comforts you. And that can happen. Or the person who hurts you then dismisses your claims that anything happened. Very, very difficult. So I understand why you don't understand it. It's really hard to get your head around. 777, an ominous good luck number, I'm sure. When I was PastCasting, remembering the good times, I felt it was a red flag. He was too into me, too obsessed, acting like the loving boyfriend. I broke up, and he told me to prepare my coffin. Ew, doesn't that just send shivers down your spine? But that's what they do. You're not doing what they want you to do. You're not giving them affirmation and validation. Then you are useless. You are worse than useless. I don't know why I keep you around, and you don't deserve to draw breath and take up space. And that's what they do. So I understand completely, and I'm so glad that you broke up, no matter what he had to say. Great. I could live in my coffin. Thank you very much. I don't want to live here. And so you could be very clear. So I hope that, it was a while ago and he's well in your rearview mirror and you don't think about him often. Brooke asked, how does it affect the kids? Oh, it's such a big question. The children are pliable, they're malleable, their brains are not fully formed. Our brains are not fully formed until we're 30, mostly by 25. But the biggest learning time is the first 6, 7 years of life. And that time we take in everything emotionally. So if we've been in a hijackal relationship and our children are in that age group, they have been watching. You know how you see a child in their crib and they're watching everything. They're standing there in their playpen and they're watching. And then when they walk or they stand up or they have a look on their face and you go, oh, look at that. That's the same way that so-and-so stands, or that's the look of so-and-so's face. They've been watching. They've been taking it all in. And they're taking in all of the vibes too. This is a safe place to be. Are these safe people? Are they nice? Do I have a place? Do they like me? Do they like each other? You're learning. They've never been here before. They don't have another family to compare it to. So it affects the children greatly, right from day one. And but even before they're born, it affects them greatly, because when you are pregnant and you are experiencing the push-pull of a hijackal relationship, your body responds with chemical washes and all kinds of things that are happening, and the baby's experiencing that. So it affects the children from even before they were born. And it really does. And if you're thinking that you should leave, then you know for sure that your children ought not to be there. It's really important. And we can certainly talk about that more. 777 said, he was so insecure and his expectations were harsh and drained me. Anxiety, so I saved myself. Yay, we love that. Love that. Good for you. That's strength. That's emerging empowered. Yay for that. That's so important for us to emerge empowered. Whatever we're experiencing in a relationship with a hijackal does not have to continue. That does not have to continue to be our reality. So we've come to the end of the comments and the questions. So let me just remind you that it takes 20 seconds from when you press send to when I see it. So if you have anything that you'd like me to talk about or a question that you have, please put them in now so that I can answer them. Because if in another 20 seconds there's nothing there, I'll consider that we've done a good job for you tonight and that you heard everything that you needed or you asked your questions. So remember, if you want to talk to me, just go to beaclient.com and use that opportunity. That's important to know that that's there for you. Also, I do have a course, a home study course that you take online. It's called Seeing the Cycles. So if you have any question about what's happening to you and you want to know more about these behaviors of hijackals, how they show up as, what you should do, all of that, go to the website for relationship help and take the Seeing the Cycles program and complete it. You know, go through it. If you're on the other side of it and you're out of it, I really encourage you to take the Emerge program. It's an email program. It's 21 steps to empowered emotional savvy. And it comes to you in the emails every couple of days, and it has worksheets and questions for self-reflection. So you do it with a journal, and that will help you come out the other side empowered. And if you're already out of the relationship, that's the perfect time to take the Emerge course. Okay, 77 says, please advise the woman, trust in the process of letting go. The reward will be amazing. Well, there, you said it to her, and you said it well. Because you do need to let go of hijackals. They're not going to change. They're very invested in being at the top of the pile, so therefore they're very invested in having nothing wrong with them that needs to change. So very important. Leni said, I left my comments on the Facebook live stream. Okay, I'll go there and have a look. I don't know why they're not showing here, but I will go over there and respond to them after we're done tonight. And it seems that we are done for tonight. So lots of ways to interact with me. When you're at forrelationshiphelp.com, You can read the blog, you can find the podcasts, you can find the courses, you can find the books, you can find everything that I have to offer over there. So go and have a nice long wander through things and read and learn and find and watch videos. There's so much there for you. So I'm really glad that you joined me tonight, and I look forward to seeing you again next week. Be sure to invite your friends, invite people in groups you belong to on Facebook. Tell them that, what kind of value you found here, and tell them to go over and subscribe on YouTube or like facebook.com/hijackals. And we'll talk again soon. Take good care of yourself because you matter. Talk soon.